Welcome to the new superheroes. Ordinary people who do extraordinary things. What's your superpower?
Hello, this is Joanna, and welcome. Today's guest is Jennifer Noel Taylor, and she has always believed that the universe is full of magic and miracles. After graduating from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, California, with a Bachelor's of Science degree in computer science and a minor in philosophy, Jennifer started her first job as a software engineer at a large company in San Diego. Although her job paid the bills, it didn't align with her true passion in life. And to cope with the disillusion she felt from work, she studied bodywork and energy healing in her free time. After attending the International Professional School of Bodywork, Esalen Institute in Big Sur, and the Maui Academy of Healing Arts, Jennifer received a very clear, intuitive message that energy healing was her true calling in life. So she took a leap of faith, left the software industry, and made the field of energy healing her new career. Since 2002, she's been the CEO, or Chief Magical Officer, as she likes to call it, of Quantum Touch, Inc. As Chief Magical Officer of Quantum Touch, Jennifer continues to promote optimal wellness by helping people connect more deeply to their love. Her business practices include spiritually rewarding jobs, loving service to the world, environmental responsibility, and financial abundance. She grew Quantum Touch from a regional U.S. company to a multinational corporation. Jennifer currently lives on Maui, loves to volunteer for the Humane Society, and fosters kittens. Imagine if more people did what they love, how much more joyful the world would be. So welcome, Jennifer Noel. I am so glad to have you on the call today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yay.
Yay.
So tell me a little bit about your transition from what you used to be in the corporate world that wasn't full of magic and miracles, wasn't full of energy, and how you transitioned. How did you find Quantum Touch?
So basically, when I graduated from Cal Poly, I started my first job in San Diego as a software developer. And I think like many people, I hated Monday. My office was about 50 degrees. It was always freezing cold. I sat in a cubicle and I had to program this mind-numbing software, and I was so bored. Like many people, I was basically going to work to collect a paycheck, and I really dreaded it. You know, most of the people working who don't like their job live for the weekends, and that was certainly me. While I was working at a job I hated, I got more and more depressed because I thought, well, is this it? Is this the rest of my life? I want to work 40 years in software and then retire, and I just was really depressed about that. So I kept on asking the universe, I know I'm supposed to have some sort of purpose, just not sure what it is. So show me my purpose. And while I was working as a software developer, I went to massage school at night. I was really fascinated by bodywork, and mostly I was fascinated by this mysterious thing called human touch. What was it? Why could a hug, for example, change your mood for the entire day? What was that about? What was so fascinating about touch? And in massage school, I found my answer, because one day I was working on a client and I started to see the energy fields emanating from people. And I realized that there's more to touch and more to life than just the physical, that we're energetic beings. I really got into energy healing and started taking some courses on energy healing. And the universe said, energy healing is your life work. That was about 17 years ago. When the universe said energy healing is your life work, I thought, the universe is crazy, because there's no way I'm going to make any money doing energy healing. That's insane. Nobody really believes in it. It's this fringe thing that hippies do. Putting this into the real world it's ridiculous. There's no way this is going to happen. I'm sure that when many people discover their life work, they're given a vision of their life work by the universe, their first response is like, yeah, you're crazy. thank you very much. I'll go back to my safe and secure job. Anyways, I couldn't help myself, though. I continued to study energy work and body work. I went to lectures on energy healing. That's when I met Richard Gordon, who's the founder of Quantum Touch. About 1 minute after I met him, the universe said, oh, by the way, you're supposed to run his company. Again, I thought the universe is crazy because here I am. I don't know this person at all. And I asked the universe, I said, okay, so you're telling me that I need to walk up to this person and say, by the way, I'm supposed to take over your company and run it. Good luck with that, universe. My path turned into a series of synchronicities that, ended up having me run the company. So I've been running Quantum Touch for about 17 years now. It's definitely my life work is working with this energy, bringing it to the planet, helping people share their love and facilitate their own healing.
So how have you changed?
So a lot of people that have an engineering background or a scientific background or a very analytical mind have trouble with this kind of stuff because it seems not rational. Kind of reminds me of the Spock on Star Trek. Everything has to be, that's rational, or that has to be logical, or that's not logical. So a lot of what the spiritual realm looks like to analytical people looks very weird and non-rational and non-logical and completely following no algorithm whatsoever. And I think it's really scary to rational people who want to feel like there's some semblance of control going on. And we want things to make sense. I think that's part of human nature. We want all this stuff to make sense. Energy medicine, if you're looking at it initially, it seems to make no particular sense because what is the mechanism? For example, if you do energy healing on a knee and it gets better, what's the mechanism going on? Western medicine makes sense to people. Yeah, you take a painkiller, you take a chemical substance, it alters your body chemistry, and you don't feel the pain. That makes sense to people. Placing your hands on someone's knee and doing energy healing doesn't really make any rational, logical sense in our world the way we've been taught. So I think to bridge the gap, recognizing that perhaps what we've been taught isn't really the full story. And that's where I've gone with it, because if you look at the world on a deeper level, and for those engineers out there, quantum physics supports this, the world is basically a realm of energy. It doesn't seem like that to us, but in reality, everything is a realm of possibilities. Everything is a realm of energy, and the physical reality is a projection of that energy. So that means that despite how it seems, nothing's really real. I'll give you an example. So kittens do various behaviors, like they use the litter box, they destroy your couch, they eat food, they do all this behavior. Now, according to the quantum world, the kitten's doing this all at the same time. It's destroying the couch and chewing your throw pillow and whatever, all at the same time. That's the quantum world. Then when we observe something, it actualizes and into a particular pattern. Once we observe the kitten, we can watch it scratching the couch. And that's the mystery of the quantum world, because what's not fully understood, I've done a lot of the science on this, is like, how does our observation really influence the actual reality? And that's the mind-body question, and it's been a conundrum in philosophy and computer science and regular science for ages. Just how do we integrate the realm of energy with the realm of the physical? On some level, this energy medicine does follow some logic, but there's a little bit, mystery involved. There's different theories and all these different scientific backgrounds about how this happens, how our observation actually influences reality. That's part of the fun for me of energy medicine, is continue to go into a deeper understanding of how does that really work.
Definitely. So I know that there's a lot of rational people out there, very rational and logical. And then there are the ultimate extreme of people who only want to work with energy. How do you bridge that gap between the two? A lot of the people in the healing world struggle to make money. They struggle to live in this reality.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that groundedness and that struggle, neither side wants to be like the other.
Yeah, so bridging the gap between the real world and the spiritual world when they're seemingly so different. That's how it appears, at least. But I believe that there is no gap between the two worlds, because science has shown us that everything is energy. So if everything is energy, that means that the whole physical reality is actually a spiritual reality. So there is no gap between the two. However, they seem very different.
Right.
And I think one of the problems is that a lot of people in the spiritual healing communities have a negative association with money and the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is that it doesn't need to be that way. There doesn't need to be a negative association between these denser things like money and energy, because if you're in the healing arts, you can use things in the material world like money to further your spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
So money isn't the antithesis of energy. It can help you spread your work. And I think that's something really important to remember, is that nothing is inherently evil or good. It's how you use it. Money's a tool.
Absolutely. And so you wrote a book about this, didn't you?
Yeah, I my book has just come out. It's called Spiritual and Broke: How to Stop Struggling with Money and Live Your Purpose. And a lot of it delves into this topic because I know so many people, including myself, get into these healing arts, get into coaching, get into these healing practices, and basically they're struggling with money and living out of their car, or just can't afford to buy a house, or just there's no income coming in. There's a disconnect, which we we're just talking about, between doing these spiritual things and making money. So my book talks about my journey of how do we bridge the money and spirit. And I go in a lot of detail about what I learned and how people can apply it to their world.
Did you come to this while working with the energy, or did you kind of have an inkling about this before you started working with energy?
Well, what happened to me is probably people's worst nightmare, because when I quit my real job in the real world, writing software, as I call it, to work with Quantum Touch, I believed that if you do what you love, the money will follow. However, what I learned is that I went and did what I loved, and there was no money.
Oh, no.
There was a lot of debt and, stress about money. And just, it was when Richard and I first started running the company, Richard and I had no furniture. It just, we were really struggling. And it thrust me into this question about, well, what's going on? Why is it that I follow my heart and my bank account is negative? Mm-hmm. And just to illustrate the point, I had $35,000 of credit card debt. We took out a $100,000 line of credit for the business, and we were just hovering around, barely making it. That's $135,000 of debt. That means my net worth was a negative $135,000. I had to raise $135,000 just to be broke. My situation is not unusual. About 75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have any backup cash or anything. And I can tell you that's really stressful.
Right.
So that's where I started, and I started to ask the question, well, what's going on? Why is doing what I love like this just struggling like crazy? So that's how my book started.
Awesome. And so what well, I guess you have to get the book to find out, but can you give us a little bit of what was the process that you used to get from being totally broke to becoming successful and living on Maui? What are some of the things that you did to facilitate that?
Well, yeah, I describe my journey in my book, and I'll give you a few highlights of it. So the first part of this journey was shifting my consciousness around money, because like many people, I was waiting for God to fix my money. I'm saying, okay, God, I'm doing what I love. Come on, bring on the money. Where's the money? And the problem with that is I felt like a victim and a martyr for the cause. I felt like, wow, I'm really serving others, and I'm sacrificing myself to help others. And that's a common theme that I see, this martyr self-sacrifice, even in the religious traditions, taking these vows of poverty, right, sacrificing yourself to help others. It's a big theme. And I was doing it. And I had a big wake-up call, which I describe in my book, where I realized that, wow, this victim consciousness, this self-sacrificing mentality is the very thing that's keeping me broke. Because if our reality is a projection of our energy, and I'm projecting victim and martyr and self-sacrifice and look what I'm doing for you mentality, right? I'm suffering to help you, right? That mentality, that projection is the antithesis of abundance. Like, right, you cannot create abundance when you're projecting victim and martyr into your reality. And it shows up, and most of us have this, and everyone I've talked to that is struggling financially on some level, if you dig deep enough, they feel like a victim of something. They blame the IRS, they blame Trump, they blame the government, they blame the slow market or whatever it is, there's something, or God's a common one. Like,
good.
God, why are you doing this to me? You see this theme a lot, like it's God's fault. And waiting for God is another one, waiting for the flow. Like, okay, I'm waiting for the spiritual flow. I'm going to sit back and wait for direction from Spirit. And they wait for years because the flow never happens. What I'm suggesting is that instead of waiting for God, consider that God may be waiting for you. To take ownership of your money, take ownership of the problems. Don't get out of the blame thing, get out of the martyr thing, get out of the victim thing. And I talk about a big wake-up call in my book about what was my wake-up to first of all, I realized I was doing this victim thing. And second, I need to change this if I'm ever going to change anything. Now that's a big step that anyone can take, is to really look at, are you playing the victim on any level in life? And if you are, take, first of all, just the consciousness, if you are, just the awareness that, oh, wow, I just had a victim-y thought. That's interesting. And then say, look, I created my problem, and I can also create something different. Right. Taking an empowered approach.
So taking responsibility, right?
That's
taking
really
responsibility
huge
for your life and everything in it.
That is really huge. Believing that you can create anything. You're not limited by anything people tell you or what you're currently making or, your current expenses or your debt. Believing that once you take your power, that you can create whatever you want.
That is powerful. Once you realize that blaming everyone else isn't going to make things better, and that you can actually take control of your life, even the good things and the bad things, saying, yeah, I did this and I can change it. I think that's such a powerful, powerful place to be.
If you think about it, if you did like me and had $135,000 of debt, you can say, look at that. I created all that debt. Isn't that amazing? That's an amazing creation to be able to create that much debt. That is awesome. It takes a lot of work to create that much debt. It's an accomplishment. So if you can create debt, you can create savings. If you can create, struggling with money, you can create abundance. If you can create poverty, you can create something different. You can just change the track that you're on. That's what I realized. Like, wow, look at how powerful I created that much debt. That's amazing.
How good did it feel when you got out of all the debt?
Getting out of debt is really an interesting idea, because if you're in debt, you're basically running your life at a loss. Your day-to-day life is always making no money. It's you're losing money. That is an interesting state of consciousness to be in, to feel like you're constantly at a loss. If you start to think about running your life at a profit, you start running your life at a profit. So that means you're bringing in more money than you're spending. That's a really incredible shift. It affected my feelings of worthiness.
Right.
Like, wow, I'm worthy enough to run my life at a profit. Isn't that amazing? Like, I deserve to run my life at a profit, because when you're running your life at a loss, I didn't feel worthy to be making a profit. Right. And the realization that your money can make money was a big one for me. That, even when you start to save money, it became really different for me. Instead of having my money make other people rich, because debt basically makes other people wealthy, my money was starting to make some money. So I started a savings account. I had $20,000 in savings. When I first got started, there was $20,000 in there, and it was making a little interest every month. Like, wow, this is amazing. My money made $1. That's a different mindset than running your life at a loss. And even though $1 is not that much, it was the first start of realization that your money can make you money, which to me was big.
That's great. So your money was working for you instead of you working for the money.
Yeah, you can start getting to the point where your money, and I'm certainly not the expert at this, and I'm just getting started because it's only been a few years that I got out of debt and started saving. But I recognize I invested a little bit. My money made a couple $1,000. I'm like, this is kind of cool. It's a different way to look at money. I think it's really empowering to get out of debt and have your money start making a little money.
There's a lot of financial gurus or whatever, and they're like, well, you just need to save money. But for people who are living day to day, like paycheck to paycheck, it's really hard to just say, oh, okay.
It's hard. It's hard. Okay, here's the deal. Like, first of all, budgets suck.
Right.
Budgets don't really work and they suck because nobody wants to do a spreadsheet and track all their expenses and income. Nobody wants to do that. The person who does that, kudos to you. I don't like it. Second of all, the idea of frugality sucks because, this idea of scrimping and saving and being frugal and wearing one dress every day, having just one article of clothing. And I always had this image of frugality was like living in a house full of rats and cobwebs where you can't afford anything. But to me, that's my mindset around frugality. It feels constricted. It doesn't feel abundant to me to think about frugality. It bothers me. And frugal people tend to bother me. People who count the pennies when you go out to dinner to make sure that you just pay your piece, and sometimes that can get annoying. People are so into penny pinching that they start to get socially annoying.
Right.
So it just didn't have a good taste in my mouth to try to deal with budgets and frugality and that kind of stuff. So I thought that's not going to work for me. It's very hard I felt like conventionally save money. I can tell you more about that if you want, but I didn't really like the idea of budgets or being frugal. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. And it's more of a mindset shift. So once you shifted your mindset, it's not like you started off like, I'll just save a little bit, but it was when you shifted your mindset that everything started to turn around.
Once I got rid of the victim mentality and started taking an empowered approach, the first thing I realized, wow, I'm responsible for all the money I make and all the money I spend. It was the simple thing of basically I'm spending more than I make. Like most people, I'm spending more than I make and I'm responsible for this. It's not because of my bills. It's not because of whatever, because I have a car that breaks down every month. None of that, I'm responsible for all of this. So why am I spending more than I make? Looking at both of those aspects from what your energy around it is. Now, for me, the first place I looked was my spending and evaluating, what am I spending money on and why? Because we all spend money. So for me, I just decided to take a look at that and understand why do I spend more than I make from looking at my spending first. And one of the things that I looked at was just all the stuff I had. I looked at my closet and said, wow, that's interesting. Look at all the stuff I had. I looked at my credit card statement and saw everything I was spending money on. And I looked at one thing I realized was that there's a lot of things I was spending money on that I didn't even enjoy, use, or love. I think if you dig deep, a lot of people have this category of spending called habit. For example, I had clothes in my closet I never wore. I was so disorganized, I had bills that I didn't know what I was paying them for. For one example, we had this bill that I was paying $50 every month for some kind of internet service. Because it was so small in my mind, I didn't pay attention to it. I thought, okay, it's probably something important. I'll just pay it. But as I was going through all my expenses, I looked at this and said, what is this for, really? And I called up the company, and it turned out I was paying for internet service at a house we had vacated 5 years ago. So it's almost like applying a Marie Kondo to your credit card statement. She's the one that wrote, how to declutter your life,
Right.
only keep what sparks joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The magic of tidying up. Doing that to your credit card statement or your bank statement is like looking at every item and saying, does this spark joy?
Right.
And I actually just took a pen and said, nope, none of this sparks joy except, okay, that does, right? Really, most of this doesn't spark joy. And if you think about it, do you love where you live? Does this spark joy? Are you paying rent into something that you enjoy? And if you don't enjoy it, why not? So
Right.
If you're paying $2,000 a month for a crappy place you don't like, why? Ask yourself, what's going on here? Why am I doing this? For me, makeup, I was weird about makeup. I would buy it, but I never used it.
Mm-hmm.
Never knew how, never figured it out, never really got into it, but I thought I should, be fully made up every time. So that was a checklist. I'm like, okay, I'm not really enjoying this. Now, that was my experience. Sometimes I felt obligated to attend workshop. Never enjoyed, but felt obligated. There's a lot of things I was spending that I didn't really enjoy or love. And when I naturally got into that, I started to curtail my expenses naturally. No budget needed. I just really cut back on my own pretty much. Now, every time I go to spend money, ask yourself the question, am I buying something I love? Or is there some other reason behind this purchase? And really valuing what you're spending money on, it makes a huge difference because there's so much we spend money on that really doesn't have a lot of meaning. That's just a little tidbit. Then I deal with the earning money side too. Let's say you've gotten your expenses down to what is good for you and you're still not really getting ahead, then you have to look at why you're not making much money. And anyways, I have a whole issue on that as well. Like what's going on with people who just aren't bringing in any money. It's mostly due to what I found is worthiness, dealing with your worthiness stuff. And there's many ways that plays out. So I'll give you an example. The average American watches TV 5 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like, and that time can be used to bring in more revenue. Even if you have a job that sucks and you hate, but you're not ready to quit it, there's so much free time to be doing something else that brings in more money. And when you turn off the TV and figure out what that is, you can have your full-time job that pays the bills and do your thing on your own. You can develop what you love on the side and bring in extra income. And that's just one idea, but there's just so many ways where feeling not good enough can interfere with the amount of money we're bringing in. Another way that interferes is believing that we don't deserve to make a profit. I know I struggled with that. Here I am, we're serving the world. We don't really deserve to make a profit. We should just struggle to get by because that's appropriate for our job, right? It's your head. These are the stories I was telling myself. Or I deserve to kind of be struggling with money. That's just I'm not worthy of actually making a profit. These scripts are there. I'm too fat to represent the health and fitness industry. That's another thing that I've had in my own scripting. So really identifying what makes you feel bad, that whatever self-talk you're telling yourself where you feel bad about, because these are clues.
That's so true and so key, because I've seen, there's so many people out there that are doing really great work, but not getting paid as much as some people who are just really good at marketing.
Yeah, and marketing isn't even marketing, it's self-worth. Because there are people out there, like you said, there are people out there doing really amazing things and they're struggling and their thing is awesome. The problem that I see is that, okay, here's the common response I get about marketing. Well, I hate marketing. Marketing sucks. I don't like it. It feels too, I'm just not good at it. That kind of whole thing, that whole story about marketing. My feeling is there's nothing wrong with marketing. The problem is your feelings of worthiness around what you're doing. Owning your value, because when you own your value, you're not really marketing ever. You're doing what you enjoy that happens to promote your work.
Right.
So, for example, I used to be really scared about doing radio shows when I first started. And that wasn't anything wrong with the show or me. It was very low self-worth and thought, well, why would someone want to listen to me? So really, I think the barrier to marketing is really a self-worth issue. Same with procrastination. I believe procrastination is worthiness. It's that whole script of saying, well, if you dive deep into the procrastination, the reason why you're procrastinating is because you don't feel worthy of putting your work out there. That's why I feel like so many people procrastinate.
Interesting. I think that's probably true, because when you really get into doing what it is that you love to do, there's nothing in that moment that can stop you from doing it. It's all in your head ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
So it's thinking about doing the thing.
It's if you're doing what you love, you don't have to procrastinate because you want to do it. So if you're procrastinating, there's something about either you don't love it, okay, so you shouldn't be doing it then, or you're procrastinating for a reason that you're saying, well, I don't feel like I have anything to offer, or I know so many people that procrastinate because they feel like, well, I feel like my offerings are subpar. That person's doing so much better than I am in this field, and so why even bother getting started or putting my work out there? So that's why I think a lot of people procrastinate. The other reason is you really don't love it, and then you're really on the wrong track then. If you feel like you're procrastinating because you don't really love it, then look at why, what's going on there.
This work is so powerful. And it's so important because I think everyone's up-leveling right now in sharing what they want to share and living their dream of like doing whatever it is that they want to do. But unless they get this financial part, unless they get this self-worth part, they're not going to be able to fully transition into their dream job, whatever that might be. So I think this is so important. And what was the name of your book again?
It's called Spiritual and Broke, How to Stop Struggling with Money and Live Your Purpose. It's on Amazon right now. And I wrote this book basically because I want to help other people avoid all the stuff that I was doing the last 17 years, struggling with money for the last 15 or 14 years. I'm hoping that other people can avoid all this, just do what they love and be prosperous, hopefully fairly soon, right after they get started. So that's my intent. I'd like to help other people avoid this nonsense and just do what you love and enjoy it and buy that house, have a car that's not falling apart every time you try to drive it. You'll stop living on somebody's couch. I've seen it all. So, or, living in your van, trying to sell jewelry or whatever it is. I'm just hoping that all these wonderful light workers out there improve the world, and we need the funding to do that.
Amen to that.
Amen. Yes.
Oh, Jennifer, I am so thankful that you were on the show today, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey with us. I just appreciate you so much. So where can people find out more about you? And I'm going to put this in our show notes so that you can go to thenewsuperheroes.com, and the show notes. They'll all be here, but where can they find you and get more information about you and your work in the world?
So the website that I have right now is called jennifernoeltaylor.com. Or if you can't remember that, spiritualandbroke.com. They both go to the same place. And right now I have a special. If you sign up for my mailing list, you get the first 3 chapters of Spiritual and Broke for free. Sweet. And don't worry, I won't bombard you with a bunch of emails. And like I said, my book is on Amazon. So if you want to read the whole thing, it's currently on sale on Amazon, Spiritual and Broke. I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. So anyone who is really interested in making a difference in your finances, please get Jennifer's book. It would totally make a difference in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.